Okay, let's see if we can get this thing going. All right. Gonna play the video here. Nope. All right, you have to pause. Creating. It's not helping. All right. Well, I thought this thing was gonna play, but I guess not. Here we go. Let's see if it plays in here. I'm supposed to see if I could get it to play. Hmm. You know, when you have a plan, I hope everybody's doing good. Chaplain Dean Alley. Sorry for my inept ability to figure out this media because I was trying to play it and I thought I was playing it. And um, I don't know why it's not going into that slot. How about the presentation? Maybe it's a different slot. I don't know. Nope, it's not working there. Let's try background. Maybe background will work. Nope. Not working there too. So more to more to come. I apologize. More to come on this whole part here. I did all that work by putting this together, and was thinking maybe that this would play, and you guys should get a first-hand look. And let's do new in, introduction here that I was doing, but for whatever reason, it does not want to play in the zone here. So, anyways, I hope everybody's doing good. So, just sorry for the delay, distraction. Just again, not sure why that is not that is not playing. But, anyways, nevertheless, cold night. Hope everybody's doing good. Went to the doctor's recently. Had some things that I still leave in God's hands, and I'm sure that. I am more than confident that he has it, and that I will be just fine. And it's just a matter of working through some things, and I'm very confident that he has this under control. So a lot of people are asking for updates on that. Still, jury's still out, and God's still working in the background. So I wanted to talk about just real quick. I'm not going to take a whole lot of time, like I normally try to do something a little bit deeper in study, but I want to talk about a loving God. I've had people ask me, I can't be loved, or God can't love me, and does He love me? Um, I assure you that God first loved us. Now, um, we only know that because that's what the Bible tells us. And remember, we set everything about our walk is built on the foundation of truth, and the truth is the Bible, and that comes first. Um, and it's not it's a help meet, if you will, through our lives and situations that we deal with. And there's so many things that could go deep. It's very deep, and um, I'm not an expert. I don't have it all figured out. Trust me, I have a long ways to go. God, I'm a work in progress, as I always tell folks. But let me just talk a little bit about uh, the believer's response to God's love and favor. And let's see if I could share the screen. This might help. Um, well, and guess what? I probably can't get that to open up. Nice. Um, how about this? Here we go. Try this. All right. See if that shares to you guys. I'm not sure if it's sharing or not. Yeah, there you go. So I'm going to just take you into Deuteronomy 6:4. Um, and let me go over here. I wanted to take this thing out of the way here, but I don't even know how to do that. But let's just focus on um, Deuteronomy 6, and let's look at verses 4 through 7, and let's read it together. So these are the verses. We're at 4. So right here, you could almost see the highlights that I've had. That would tell you that I've studied it uh, before today. And but let's walk through it together and see what the Bible says, because we base everything we do should be biblically based. So Deuteronomy, we know Moses wrote it. We know that. What do we know about Deuteronomy? We know that it is a book that is taught with Moses' law. It teaches us of the commandments and things in the in Israel's day. Let me see. I'll pull this open for you. This might even help you. Let me see if I can pull it. It's what happens is when you are loaded up with all the software. Let me go here. Um, it it doesn't like it's a lot on the CPU, if you will. New Testament. I had it open. I apologize, guys. Okay. All right. Let's see if I can get that open now. All right. So that's John. Nice. Well, you guys are really having a great treat tonight, huh? All right, let's see if I can't get out of this one. And it's the whole software piece here is floating because the CPU is definitely taking a beating. All right, let's see if I find. Let's find Old Testament. Old Testament. Try that. All right. Ta-da. All right. Let me see if I can open it up from here. All right. Watch it be an outline. Yep, wrong one. All right. Apologize again. Let's see here. Uh, I really should put my glasses on. These are okay right here. So let's look at Deuteronomy 4. This should be it right here. I apologize. Let's see. You guys are probably like, all right, enough. Stop apologizing. We don't want to hear it anymore. All right, let's see. Okay, yeah. So this is basically in this narrative, it talks about the commandments, the greatest love for God, the believer, the duty of God, the nature is one. And this is in the first four verses 4 and 5. And what is the greatest commandment in the law? And we know that, remember that Jesus himself was asked this question and he answered without hesitation, right? And he answered in with all authority of God Himself, and he answers. Um, what his answers was eye opening. He quoted the passage in Deuteronomy, and know that the Lord our God is one, and he says he is the Lord Jehovah, Yahweh, which is the Hebrew word for Jehovah. God is with us. God is the great creator and the sovereign master of the universe. Therefore, he is the Lord of all. There is not one God of Jews, religious, Jew being religious, and another God of a Gentile. So there's no two different gods here, is what it's saying. And um, there's not different gods and races and nations in the world. It's just one God. And so he's trying to declare that in the statement here. So let's just read these verses right here. So hear, O Israel, the Lord of our God is one. Lord is, or excuse me, and thou shalt love the Lord thy God with all thy heart, with all thy soul, with all thy might. And these words which I command thee this day shall be in thine heart, and thou shalt teach them diligently unto thy children, and shall talk of them when thou sittest in thine house, and when thou walkest by the way, and when thou liest down, and when thou risest up. So the believers to respond to God's love and favor, and we are to be communicating in this way. We should be um, we should be glorifying God in everything we do. We should be giving Him the glory, and we should be proclaiming salvation, okay? And um, of God's salvation, the good news, the gospel. And He's a loving God, and He wants us. Um, Jesus tells us, and He quotes Deuteronomy, love thy God with all thy heart, mind, soul, body. So Jesus also calls out for us to love above all else. He summarizes the law in the matter of love. And let me go here. I'm going to have to make sure I don't have a whole lot of applications open because it does not like it floats. It floats because it's the CPU is overtasked right now. All right, so I want to go to Matthew's, and I'd like to go to verse 20. I mean, chapter 22, and I'm going to read verses 37. Let's find it. 37. Stop floating. 37. And I'm going to read, see, to 40, 37 through 40. Notice the highlights. Means I've been here before. So it says in verse 37, this is Matthew chapter 22, verses 37, and I'm going to read to 40. Jesus said unto him, Thou shalt love thy Lord thy God with all thy heart, and with all thy soul, and with all thy might, that this is the this is the first and great commandment. And the second is like unto it, thou shalt love thy neighbor as thyself. On these two commandments hang on all the law and the prophets. That's hard to do sometimes, right? Um, we love ourselves. It's just an inherent thing, right? But if what is God, the love for God or God's love towards us, and what is He telling us we need to do? Well, we know we got to be obedient, and these are things that He's telling us to do, and to help us with that. So Jesus not only talks about it, you notice the red, that would be indicating that Jesus is speaking, and he's essentially. Let me see if I can get back here. One of the Pharisees or the Sadducees, I guess at that point, were challenging him and kind of tempting him, and basically of the law. I mean, most of the Sadducees and the Pharisees were, many were part of the Sanhedrin, and they were. When you see the word law, a lot of times it just religious studies of law of the Jewish law. That's usually what they were referring to, and they're kind of tempting Jesus in this case right here, but he answers that and talks about the fact that you should love who God, and we've seen that twice now. We saw it in the Old Testament; it points to the New Testament, right? Anything in the Old Testament that points to the New Testament, we need to sit up. Well, everything is important, but we really need to take note because um, that is the new covenant that we're under with Jesus. A lot of the things that happen in the Old Testament, those are precepts and those are principles that we can take and learn from and use those as, I would say, uh, additional information to help us in our Christian walk, to understand the Bible a little bit better, understand some of the historical backdrop of the Old Testament, which is all God's inspired word. Um, but here we are talking about two definite things here in terms of obedience. So we're told twice in Deuteronomy, now in Matthew. Let's look at Christ's love for us must compel us to love and serve. Remember, I said it was difficult for us to be able to love our neighbors sometimes. Um, I can remember, just let me give you a situation. I was struggling at work one time, and I was having a hard time with one of my leaders, and I was just having a really, really, really tough time getting through and communicating. And I just didn't know. I was praying. I was like, Lord, you're gonna have to show me, and I don't know. And I remember sitting in one of Pastor Joe Brock's sermons on a Sunday night, and Pastor said in his message, he said, "Have you prayed for that problem specifically?" And it was like, "There's no way I'm praying for this guy. I'm not going to pray for this guy. I don't want. I'm not going to pray for him. He's making my life miserable. I'm not doing that." And it just worked on me, and it worked on me, and it worked on me. And there was great wisdom in those words that he was preaching that night. And I did. I started to pray about that. And I have a really good relationship with that individual now, um, where I didn't think it was possible because my fleshly person or my fleshly situation was trying to take over and say, there's no way I'm going to pray for this guy. You're crazy. And we get like that. That just it's because we're human, and it took that message. It took those um, verses of loving your neighbor to help me understand and get me through a situation where I was struggling and dealing with, and it worked out really good. So let's get 2 Corinthians chapter 5. Let's see as I float. I don't understand. This thing is. I have a new computer system, and this thing I've partitioned the hard drives. It's got plenty of room, but I guess when you're in high definition, which it uses more data, it tends to put the pressure on the CPU. And I dare not turn on the. Let me see, just because I'm talking about it. Let's see if I can pull it up here. Well, nothing's worked tonight anyway, so what does it matter, right? It happens. All right, let me get out of there. I don't even see it on there. Hmm. Maybe it's not. Maybe I moved it. I don't know. Anyways, no biggie. Okay, we were going to Corinthians. That happens. Does that happen to you? I sometimes get distracted, and I could start on something, and then next thing you know, boom, I'm completely in another whole area where I don't want to be. So I'm going to go to chapter 5, and I'm just going to go to verse 14 and 15 and pull that up for you so you can see that. So 14 and 15. So Christ's love for us um, must compel us, first of all, to love and serve. You have to love God with all your heart, mind, soul, and body, as we just saw with those two verses, right? That's our obedience thing. These are things we do that He wants us to do, and you know, an old saying I used to say is the food tastes better and you slept better when you did what you were supposed to do. So in this case, um, uh, we're talking about we must love God. So let's see what it says here. It says, "For the love of Christ constraineth us, because we thus judge that if one died for all, then we all dead. We're all dead, and that He died for all, that they which live should not henceforth live unto themselves, but unto Him which died for them and rose again." That's pretty powerful right there. Um, he died for us. Sometimes that's hard to put our head around. Um, it happened, folks. If you just go, I would challenge you to pick up the Gospels. Just read right through the Gospels. Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John. Read that, and read that as if you were reading a historical book. I think that will open up many uh, doubters in this world, because that happened, and there is lots to back that up. There's a lot of different writings in the centuries that over the centuries in antiquity. Many writers, Josephus and many others, wrote specifically about Jesus's time frame and his time here on earth, and can validate that. And they weren't Christians. They weren't Christians. So they pretty much backed that up. And you know, today, I mean, there's a lot of people that have um, they're kind of skeptical, like, yeah, it happened a long time ago. Not really. No, not really. I mean, you're talking, you know, um, you know, 80, 0, what, 30, 31, 32, 33, somewhere around there. And then you fast forward, you say, well, that's 2,000 years ago. Well, we still documented things. We still kept good records, and especially through the Masoretic text and the authorized text that we study um, from the Hebrew standpoint. It's documented and it's authenticated. It's authenticated. Archaeologists and studies and theologians and many people, scientists. Um, there's a guy now, Jordan Peterson, I think, is a guy. He's an atheist. He doesn't believe in God. But I've talked to people that are atheists or were atheists that became Christians because of George Peterson, because he proved that there's some things that are pretty accurate. Um, and people will say to me, "Well, you got to prove it to me." Well, first of all, let me say this: if I wrote your name in, or Jesus came down and wrote your name in the sky, would you believe it? Well, you know, some people just aren't going to believe, and that's their choice. And that's the beauty of what God gave us. He gave us the ability to choose, um, and we're not the robots. And He gave us that point of entry here where we can make our own decisions. You think about that. You love somebody. Think about it. If you were younger and you were dating somebody and you like this person, but that person didn't like you, and what did they say? Oh, we just want you. I just want to be your friend. That's all I want to be is your friend. Well, that kind of makes you feel like deflated, right? Oh, I'm just gonna be a friend. Um, but what do you do ultimately? You okay, all right, you accept it and you let it go. And then the old cliche is, if you love somebody, you let them go. Well, I want you to think of it from this context, that if Jesus, who loves you so much, gave you the choice to go do your thing, that is the ultimate sacrifice, as well as dying for your sins on Calvary, on cross. Calvary being Greek, was it the skull, Golgotha in the skull? That would be the Hebrew name, but Calvary's the Greek side. And I can tell you that I see it. I study, um, and people say, "Well, hey, you got to prove to me that Jesus was alive and this and that." Well, we've got and there's no question about it. I can't personally prove it. I believe it. Do I believe the entire Bible is the truth? I do. Some people don't. That's okay too. Um, but I do. I believe, based on what I've studied and what I've read, I believe it to be true. And um, it's in my mind, it's like people will say, "Well, you got to prove that this or prove that." I mean, look, time out. I want you to try to prove to me that Alexander the Great um, did what that they said in a book was about that. Prove that to me. Or even prove to me that George Washington took a boat across the thing. You can't, other than what was written about him, right? Your history books are written about certain individuals in our history. George Washington, many of the Revolutionary War, all that stuff is we can't prove it. We didn't see it. We weren't there. We aren't eyewitnesses. But the people that wrote these books, especially the Gospels, especially the inspired folks, um, they saw it, they witnessed it. And if you're an apostle and you died the death that they died, you probably pretty convicted that that actually was a true thing that you saw. And I don't look, somebody dies, you bring them back to life, you got me for life. I believe it. I mean, you don't have to convince me any further. And there's a lot of people that want to just shoot holes in that. And there's some folks out there. But deep down, I think they really know um, that's the truth. And we can either accept it or we're not. Remember, He loves us so much, God's love, that He gives us that choice. So that's 2 Corinthians. Let's go to Joshua 22:5. Oh, let's go a couple more verses. I'm going to get out of here. Sorry again for my horrible computer work here. 22, Joshua, Jacob. All right, 22. We're going to go to 22, and we're going to let's see what Joshua has to tell us. And what are we going to learn? What are we trying to see? Let's go to 22:5. Let's go to verse 5. All right, what is verse 5 going to say? Okay, so, but take diligent heed, right? Take diligent heed to do the commandments and the law which Moses, the servant of the Lord, charged you, to love the Lord your God and walk in all his ways and keep his commandments and cleave unto him and to serve him with all your heart and with all your soul. Think about that, all right? Deuteronomy, Matthew, 2 Corinthians, and now Joshua is talking about it. And, so again, that just continues to show us exactly what God's love is and what our obedience piece should be. And I've been on here 25 minutes, wasting a lot of people's time because I didn't know what I was doing. I'm not going to go through the rest of the verses. I'll just walk through them and talk to you real fast. Um, just to love to love Jesus is to obey his teaching. And I would challenge you and go to John 14 and look at 14:23 and 24. The other thing I would say is Solomon tells us to respond to God's favor by serving him from the heart. You God, it's like anything else. If you are just going to fake it till you make it, or you're just going to go through the motions, or you're just going to, you know, hey, be real with yourself, be true to yourself as an individual, and be real. Say, you know what, I'm just not getting it. I need, some encouragement. Maybe I need another brother, sister, help me. Um, but you know, to respond and try to be a servant. Servanthood starts with submitting, and you have to submit that there's somebody that's higher in than you or I. And I believe that. I certainly believe that. And there is a higher being, and I call him my Lord and Savior. And uh, that's you know, a lot of people today are full of pride. A lot of people are full of themselves, and they figure they have it all figured out, and they don't need God. I say that from personal experience. So, so anyways, God showed me that He was in charge, and I thank Him for that. And I also thank for the pastor knocking on my door. So Solomon tells us how to respond and serve Him, and he shows us in First Kings. And you can go to chapter 8 and verse 56 through 61, and I'm not going to read them all. David's charge to his son Solomon's to serve God with his wholehearted devotion, which is good for all of us, right? We know David was a man after God's own heart, and David charges his son Solomon to serve God with his whole heart and his whole devotion. You're gonna have good days and bad days. Okay. Um, the beautiful thing is we can continue to keep coming to God with our problems and come to Him with our issues and concerns, and He'll hear us and He'll listen to us. It's uh, it's when we turn our back on Him and we're not obedient to the things that He asks us to do. Motivating by love, rejection, and partying, and all sinful pleasures instead of putting it on Christ. So Paul talks about in Romans 13:13 to let us walk properly, basically upright, and we should be examples. We should be, um, you're not, we're not all perfect. We're going to make mistakes, but the key is to identify those mistakes and humble yourself, and get back at it, and don't just give up on it and walk away a one and done. I think of those parables where the seed that falls on the ground and the rocks, and trouble comes along and people fall off and fall away, and the whole goal is trying to find good ground where it's rooted in and you've got a good foundation. Well, that's what we have to do. We have to have a good foundation. God's love for all of us should move us to strive for purity. um, and we can see that in 2 Corinthians 7:1. But so my whole point here of talking about the loving God that we have, He loves us. He's going to let us make our decisions. You're going to make your own decisions. You're going to do those things. And I don't say this to be ugly. I say this in love, that we're all accountable to what we do. I carry my own cross, and I will have to stand before God one day and explain when He says, "Okay, Dean, I gave you X amount of years. Tell me what you did to serve me. What'd you do to progress? Proclaim the gospel or progress it. What'd you do?" And I'm going to have to be accountable to that. And so we should be striving to do our best to live as we ought to. And does it mean we're going to be perfect? No. Am I perfect? Nope. I am far from it. Far from it. But my point of that is, I wanted to talk about uh, God's love for us, And what does he expect from us? And it starts with his our love towards him, um, with everything we have in our souls, and then to our neighbors and to our fellow Christians, to everybody. And now I will say this: most folks will say, I will say this, and I'll say this before I jump off here, is that um, because you don't agree with somebody or someone's lifestyle, um, bad habits, drug habits, alcohol habits, or whatever, and you don't agree with those, that doesn't mean you don't love them. And a lot of people will associate that you have to accept these things that I do for you to love me, and that's not a truth. That's not a true statement. I can still love you and not like a behavior or like a habit or a habitual thing that has got a vice on you and a decision you may have made. I can still love you. Um, but it doesn't mean that I have to agree with you to love you. And that's what I wanted to say. A lot of people put that into perspective and say, well, if you don't love me if you don't agree with what I say, do, or act. That's not that's your that's not a true statement. That truly is just you looking for somebody to affirm whatever you're doing, and that's not my place. I'm not there for that. But I also know that I don't have to um, agree with everything, and people don't agree with me on everything. That's my wife. But anyways, I appreciate everybody. I know this was a quick jump here. The internet's been down pretty much all day. Haven't had an opportunity to even get in here. I had some things I was doing. I was in the middle of working on some stuff, and it didn't work out earlier. So I appreciate you. God bless. And if you guys need anything, let me know. Thank you. God bless. Dean Allen.